Okay,
Okay.
nice. Welcome. Hey, Marek.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Marek. Hello,
Hey,
Marek.
Marek.
Hi, nice to see you.
So yes, and I see that also we have participants still joining, and we already have them. So I think we can start, and I can also say hello to everyone, and I'm really happy to welcome you for today's discussion about one of the most important part of the field service, which is frontline, and about field workers and how to make them feel good and how to make them happy. And is that even possible? So, what are the key things to make field workers stay with your company for longer? And I'm sure every one of you have heard stories about technicians with big fingers who crashing the devices and have never worked with touch screens. So, how to overcome these fears as well? And let's find this out. And for that, I would like to present our today's sharks of field service management, and the person who is like Google for field service management, having all the trends and stats about different industries in FSM, Kris Oldland, editor-in-chief from Field Service News. Hi, Kris.
Hey, hello everybody. Gosh, that's a big shoes to fill there, Yanis. But I'll do my very best.
Yes, and the person who knows what are the best devices for the field workers, how to take care of the device security and remote device management. Marek Pajączkowski, business development manager from Samsung Electronics. Hi, Marek.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And the person who released first version of field service management solution even before FSM description appeared. Arunas Eitutis, CEO at Frontu.
That's even bigger shoes to fill.
Yes. And as today's moderator, me, Yanis Balodis, at VP of Sales at Frontu. So hello, guys, and really thank you very much for joining today. And let's start with one, the main topic of today's, which is field service management. And I would, field service management work has become more expensive due to several reasons like salary, tax increase, gasoline, etc. So my question to you guys to open this discussion is how hardware and software could impact that, meaning cost savings, revenue increase, and how it can increase field worker productivity. So, yes, Kris, I see you can.
Yeah, I suppose there's one further question I'll add into this because Marek, Arunas, I'm sure you'll have a lot of information and insight into the first part of that question, how we can boost the productivity, how we can get more for less. The amount of times I speak to service leaders and we're in this dichotomy at the moment of trying to challenge them to do more. We have less resource, and then we have things like now we need to start them collecting data additionally so we can get ready for this connected field service world that's coming down the line. But the other thing that I think often gets overlooked in this is actually the layer of technology, how that can play a role in actually attracting a new workforce as well. I think we're in the whole industry is in a bit of a sea change. Some of the most successful organizations I've seen are doing two separate things. They're going out because there's not enough engineers. To be perfectly frank, every company we come to has got an aging workforce crisis. I've seen a lot of companies have been very successful going to ex-military, using those and working with people coming out of the forces, but that's not a solution either because we need the younger people coming through. So we need the Gen Zs. We're past the millennial generations in the workforce. We need to be looking at Gen Z and even thinking further down the line about Generation Alpha. So I suppose for me, it's having that nice device that is connected, whether it be glasses, tablet, phone, but having the latest technology and being seen to be an organization where you can go in and say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter whether I'm working in telcos, utilities, doesn't matter whether I'm working in white goods. I'm actually doing something that's technical. and I'm doing something that's using software and engineer and actually bringing the engineering bit back in. So we're no longer got that image. And I think the biggest problem the industry has is still this image of the guy carrying the wrench, you know, being a mechanical job. And you know, I personally, I love nothing better on a weekend than to get paint in my hair and grease all over myself, because I'm that kind of guy. But as we move forward in the world, I don't think that's as appealing to a young guy going through or girl going through high school and college and university than saying, well, I'm going to work with software and technology, and I'm going to be working with the latest tools. You know, so systems like Frontu, tools and devices that you have at Samsung, etc. And I think having that latest, I think there's a part of that in that conversation as well. So I think that needs to be acknowledged when we're looking at investment, what it means for the future. But I'll hand over to you guys, because I'm sure you've got more real-time answers around boosting that productivity and seeing that as well.
Add a bit on top. So let's think really simply about those technicians. If we think they are aging and we want younger generation to come to work, we should think what they are using at home. So if I am back at home and I'm whatever using the best apps, I'm doing YouTube, TikTok, or whatever, having the greatest UX, and I'm coming to the work, I need to touch, you know, some legacy system, that's not appealing to me. So we should think about them as a, you know, usual people at home, and that they should feel superior at work as well. But yeah, and one more thing. So I think we are too concentrated on the back office and automation of the back office. I mean, we are really already good on, I don't know, scheduling, route optimization, and other things. And I think the ratio between like dispatcher to technician ratio is something like 1 to 20, or for enterprise, I guess it's even bigger. I mean, it's not bad already. However, I would say we are not emphasizing frontline enough. So if we want to like increase productivity, we need to empower those technicians much more. I mean, we need to get like more data for them, more permissions to them, more features to them, and that's greater UX as well. And then they will, you know, become more autonomous and will bring us back, you know, data and answers, and then we can think and talk about reporting.
Yes, so gentlemen, I think you're both, you know, going the right direction. Is actually a little bit the same. So we have trouble with people aging, and the aging experts are not, you know, used to the new technologies. Frankly speaking, I don't think anybody is used to the new technology, because it's changing so fast that whatever is new is going to happen tomorrow, and we don't know it yet. So it's changing very fast. What we have to do is actually change the consciousness of the people who are managing the teams, because, like, first of all, they have to be aware of the abilities of the cloud backend and application front end, and the usability of the device. So a handheld device, which is usually in this vertical seen as something rugged, tough, and quite simple with some buttons and so on and so forth, it doesn't actually fit into the multitasking kind of environment that we need to build to optimize the frontline teams. So first of all, I guess everybody needs to be aware of the options we have in the market. So a rugged device may be a smartphone, a smart tablet, or something that is not usually, let's say, visible in the handheld of the frontline person. Secondly, these devices, together with the proper OS, they provide a lot of deployment and control features, also connected to security. So we don't need to worry about our experts having to get additional training about how to set it up. It's not needed anymore. These devices set up themselves already. They can be managed automatically, and so on and so forth. So, like, second thing, aside of the consciousness of what kind of ruggedness we can provide with smartphone, is that we don't need to worry about setting it up, even if we have a couple of hundred people in field. So that's not a threat to us anymore. Data protection, that's covered already as well. Many companies, well, they are not aware that this is already done. Next step, I guess, it's multitasking. And this is actually the part where we can think about the productivity. We can do so many things with a mobile device that help in the front line and connect them together into a process that will serve us with the best effectiveness. So let me just name a couple of features, like very, very important for this kind of activity, let's say frontline activity, is, let's say, software scanning, which is very popular now. It's very, let's say, effective, working very well, comparable with the hardware scanning, let's call it, so laser scanners. It's getting very popular, especially in like retail verticals and so on. We can have a POS terminal on our mobile device already. We can have a signature taken on a document on a tablet, so we can digitalize the paper flow and so on and so forth. Like even the basic stuff like increasing the communication quality between the front and the back end of the organization. It's very important, but it's all there already. So I guess it's very important to like not try to scare the companies with saying you have to digitalize yourself, because that's a big word. Everybody's saying, oh my god, that's going to cost me a lot. Not really. What you need is a device, a little bit of knowledge, which can be brought by the experts from the market like Frontu and Samsung and anybody else who knows a little bit about mobility, and a little bit money to invest in a mobile device, which can be also funded by a telco. So that's not much, actually, just a few steps to take.
Thank you, guys. And what is your experience on, let's say, the same productivity, and how, maybe if we are talking about field workers and the productivity and importance of the front line, so how we could work on motivation for them? Is that linked somehow with let's say hardware or software, or some kind of motivation system, or we give a device as a gift for them for personal use, or yeah?
I have the really simple example what one of the customers did. So they are a heavy machinery customer, by the way, have 70 plus technicians. So what they did, they implemented the rules, how the completed job should look like, how the good completed job should look like. And then they said, you look, if you won't do any mistakes, if you will collect all the data needed, that job is going to your bonus account or system. I don't know how to call that. Meaning that if you will do the proper job, you will always earn more. So in the first year, this company earned 180K more just because the productivity increased, just because of the simple thing. So I mean, the tool itself need to give you, the ability to create motivation system. The process, however, itself is on you, on your own company, but you have to be empowered to get, all the details from the system, from the software, and then, not punish your people, but motivate on doing more. And then, when they are motivated, productivity is increasing quite significantly.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd agree with that. I think there is, like I said earlier, we've got the challenge of, I think any service leader on the call or watching will recognize when they get tasked by the CEO and say, no offense, for instance, but you CEOs are quite often like this. We need more with a little bit less. How do we increase that product? How do we boost the top line without impacting the bottom line? And in field service operations, that comes down to how do we get more from our technicians, whether it be, less windscreen time, more technician utilization, increased first time fix rates. All of these things are all common with. But in terms, back to your question, Yanis, in terms of the motivation, I find that overwhelmingly engineers have a fairly solid mindset. They are problem solvers. That is what attracts them to the role of being an engineer in the first place, or a technician. And so what we need to do, as well as incentivizing it and make, and there's so many different areas that I've seen that we could go into and that, but it's a topic for a different conversation. The one thing I think is critical is making sure that they get the access to the information they need from their at their fingertips. And this is where it comes down to the software for me, is making sure that the software is designed and any customizations or any changes to that take into account the feedback from the field workforce. So those screens that they need to get to every single job, they're not hidden behind 2 or 3 pages. That information they need to get to that tells them, all right, let's have a look what the likelihood is of this fix. What's the problems? What are the diagnostics we need? Let's get that right and surface. Let's get them any information that they need to know about the customer and the history. So if this is a problem customer that's had many issues, they're not walking into a war field full of kind of bad intention and bad vibes without knowing about that, and they can manage that. And don't forget that our service engineers and technicians, quite often these days in the world of digitalization, they're the only physical human to human touch point that we have with our customers. Invariably, quite often, it's that opportunity for them to be a brand ambassador. So we need them to win over any problem clients. But I think all of those bits that come together, and obviously the hardware part of that as well is absolutely vital. Making sure that the tools are fit for purpose. If they're working in a outdoor environment, for example, they'll need a device that has a high nit rating so it can be seen in the sun. That's a very important conversation to have. And I strongly advise, again, any service organizations, a number of the service organizations I work with in a consultant's impact capacity, is to lean on guys like you, to turn to guys like you and say, okay, well, how do I make sure this device is right for these engineers? Or how do I make sure that my software that I'm utilizing, how do I work in that feedback from my engineers? How do I do that? Because I think that's a very important point, is just being able to make sure that the tools, we use this word too much, but the tools are there to empower the engineers to do the job. And if they're doing the job, they're happy. And I saw that, sorry, one last final point. I saw that over the pandemic, where an awful lot of service organizations, out of necessity, had to just put a lot more weight of responsibility on their engineers to be able to make their decisions on their own in real time, because the lines of communication were very fractured in those early first few months. So they were empowered even further. That's something that those organizations that have done that, they've held on to that really strongly, even though we're starting to come touchwood to the other side of everything. Having their engineers empowered in the field to be able to make decisions has made them as an organization more productive, but it's also meant that the engineers feel more bought into the organization, and so they become more loyal. So a couple of different points in there, but yeah.
Yes, thank you, Kris. And now after Arunas and Kris, your speech, I can hear that there is one important thing for every company. The field workers or the front workers, they need to have a lot of information, data to make decisions, to make their work. But we have to solve the issue how to make that huge amount of data to be easy accessible. So meaning about the UX and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, Marek, the question, the same about the motivation and how you see how device can impact, and reminding about those big fingers and crushed devices. So how you see that linked with motivation as well?
So to be honest, I was a field force employee once. I was working for a telco. I was signing contracts with customers. It was a hard job to do, and the most annoying part was that I never had the chance to get the tools that we could have today. So I was working with paper. It was incredibly annoying because at least 2 visits per customers were needed to finalize the deal. Today, we could completely digitalize the document flow. We can digitalize the process. And as Kris mentioned, we need to hear the voice of the people in field. We need to frequently ask for their feedback to make that process more effective, make it better. And the software itself needs to be, ready to be adjusted at any time. And this is crucial because the way we build our projects is always, starting with recognizing the problem. What is the problem? What is the most painful thing in the process that we'll have to handle later on with the device? If we know that, then we try to design a solution to address that issue. And I can tell you, we have a customer in Poland. Maybe it's not a regular company. 36,000 field force employees is not a regular company, but we started to work with them a couple of years ago, and they said, okay, we have people carrying heavy bags with documents. They don't want that anymore. Their back hurts and they have to do miles with that bag, so they don't want that. First issue, digitalize the paper. Okay, we can do that. Okay, there's a EU regulation on digital signature, and our devices can support signatures together with Frontu. So we can do that. It's completely gone. People very happy, motivated to work. Why? Because they don't have to carry additional 20 kilograms of paper with them every single day to every customer. Okay, that's gone. Then eventually the company build some kind of a chat to gather up feedback, and they can actually impact the process. They can give feedback about what's good, what's bad, what customer like, what they don't like, and what's actually make the process very difficult to handle. And all of these changes were uh, kind of deployed into the system, which make the employee also work more effectively. Basically, if he works effectively, then his salary is also increasing because he can get a bonus out of his achievements. So this is the kind of motivation I guess we're looking for: having a reliable tool and a process, plus an employer that is actually listening to your voice. And it's easier to listen to the feedback when you can actually change it very fast and easy without any costs, because the decision process is just a snap away. And if you're a big organization with a huge legacy of old IT systems, change, even if you know that is needed, it's not actually that easy. So even if you want to change with an old system, that's a huge effort and a lot of costs. It's sometimes easier to update to a newer system. Entire environment built on a side of a legacy system could handle things better, faster, more effectively, and cheaper than getting back to the old stuff and trying to make it new. Sometimes it's impossible.
Just one very quick thing to add to that, Marek, as well. That explanation given the Polish organization with 38,000 field techs, like I say, a huge organization. Going back to this point around motivation as well, and for me, it's engendering loyalty. It's engendering I want to be part of this. So it's a belonging to the organization part of it. The simple fact that that organization listened to that feedback and were aware, right, this is a challenge that our engineers, our guys, they're having to carry 22 pounds of paper, whatever, kilos. They're having to carry this heavy weight, and we want to digitize that, and let's invest in that. That's an easy message for the organization to take out to their engineers to say, look, we've listened to you, we've invested in bringing that solution forward for you. We've got your back, basically. We're looking after you, we're communicating. And I think that's very powerful as well, being able to have that flow and also then highlight that investment, because that's not let's be honest, that's a huge workforce. That's not an insignificant investment. I'm sure they'll see a great ROI within a fairly short time, knowing how these digitization projects work. But just be able to say, look, this is an investment we've made for you, not for us as a company, but for you as our workforce. I think it's quite important.
Yeah. So to add to that, Chris, you see, I guess the very important thing to understand about the bigger organization is the fact that the best feedback comes from the first line. You don't get that. Companies pay millions to get reports from consulting companies that they can actually build on the feedback of their front line. So this is very important information to handle for every organization. Frontline feedback, also containing information about the customer feedback, the customer relation based on the process they are serving them, and how it works with the satisfaction rates and so on and so forth. This is crucial. We have another customer that basically came back to us after a close project of digitalization, and they said, "This is incredible. We just made a small change, and we have the biggest satisfaction rate growth in history, 6 points. That's incredible." So, like, this is an international company, a big company. I cannot mention the name, but they said, "We never had this kind of increase on satisfaction, and we just digitalized one part of the process, but it's impacting so much that we have more and more customers saying, 'Wow, that's incredible. At last you hear our voice.'" So this feedback from your first line is not only about your first line. Your first line gives a lot about the feedback from the customer as well.
Yeah.
One mistake that you can make during that kind of change is that if you, let's say, try to invest in new technologies and it's going to go wrong way the first time, well, that's going to be a big problem, because the front line is going to think, okay, they try to make it cheap on us again. So you have to be very careful. It's good to have experts advising you how to do it, somebody with experience, somebody who knows maybe your vertical, maybe how you should operate in field, maybe knows a little bit of that feedback of the engineers from different companies, and so on and so forth. This is quite important also to discuss with the experts, because one wrong step on the first step, that might actually ruin your digitalization efforts for a couple of years forward. So very important as well.
Yes, Arunas, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just one simple thing about the feedback. So we as a software providers, also need a feedback from our customers, and we thought, how to get the feedback, from the ones who are using it most, meaning frontline. So we constantly now are doing, we call it like brightest. So we just joining the one field employee for the whole day and just looking how he's using our software and asking different things. So that's working really well. I mean, we are coming back to the office, with a lot of improvements for our roadmap. When we see the real finger touches of our software, and it's just going straight to us. Yeah.
And what do you think, guys, about like mindset in general about this? So is that somehow linked as well with the business in general, business mindset? So meaning that field service was considered sometime, and still is considered in some part of the world, as supportive function, not as a separate business. So, and is that linked as well, how you maintain your employees? Because, this department for field service is just like support for our products we sell, but not as like separate streamline for the business.
Yeah, it's a huge impact. We've seen, when I first started back in the industry, I used to be a quality services manager, and then I came into publishing. So just over a decade ago, just before we launched Field Service News, the big conversation in the industry was, do we move from cost center to profit center? That was like that was a huge debate. Field service operations was a necessary evil to help companies that wanted to shift boxes. It was that simple. Now 10 years on, the conversation around servitization and advanced services, that's not just in manufacturing, although that's where it's come from. We're seeing that more and more through to the SMB sector. You see, I've got a small local service around by me here in London that I can pay a monthly subscription to, and if I want an electrician, if I want a plumber, if I want somebody just come and do some hardware, etc., they come in with that fee, and we get that connection, and it's there, and you just pay that monthly subscription. So it's part of that as a service, everything as a service kind of solution. And so we are making a massive shift societally. We've moved into a different style of economy. We've moved into a much more experiential economy. You go to Starbucks and they write your name on your coffee cup these days. Service is ingrained, and service excellence has become a differentiator. Take that out to the bigger organizations. Absolutely, we're seeing these shifts away from SLAs, standard service agreements, and we're moving to seeing shifts of guarantees of uptime. We no longer say, right, we'll get a technician there within 4 hours or 2 days or whatever the SLA is. It's like, right, you'll have 96, 97, 98% of the time that you need that asset, it's going to be operational. That shift's changing. Field Service News Research has been tracking that. We've been, I'm proud to say, my team have been at the vanguard of keeping them ahead of this curve. We've worked with academia for many years on this. And it is increasing, although it's still only about a 50-50 split. So the industry is very much in flux. However, that's at the kind of far end of the spectrum. I'd say an overwhelming majority of service organizations now have moved to looking at service as at least a strategic revenue generator. And if they haven't, then they really need to start doing so. And what that means in terms of, you know, the technology that underlies it, there's two things here. Absolutely, if you're viewing your service operation on its own separate P&L, then you're going to be seeing it as a revenue generating stream, in which case, A, you need the tools, you know, you need the software and the hardware that can, like we've discussed, empower your engineers to make sure that they are the most efficient, because you can't afford anymore to be sending out an engineer for a second and third visit. You know, we can't afford to have that situation like Marek talked about, where when he was a field worker, where he has to go out just because there's paperwork and it's unstructured processes that aren't smooth, aren't digitized. You know, we need to reduce the service to cash cycle. So when that engineer is on site and he hands over that tablet or phone to get that signature, then we have the automation that sends that straight to accounting and maybe automates the invoice straight out. So that's cash service. All of these things need to be done when we start thinking of ourselves as having a separate service P&L. But the flip side of it is, of course, we can now justify the investment. And like I touched on a little bit earlier, overwhelmingly, whether it's hardware or software or a combination of both, investment in FSM technology almost always sees a very quick ROI compared to other areas, because FSM is mission critical and it's got huge untapped resource potential as service revenue generation. So yeah, sorry, that's what I'm a bit passionate about.
Yes. Thank you. Arunas, Marek, anything to add for that?
Basically, of course, I agree with Kris a lot. And one thing I would like to add is that if a company having their field force before COVID was thinking that it's actually a cost center, after COVID they think otherwise already. I think they think, first of all, it became a critical department. Secondly, definitely a revenue generating team. Either it's I don't know, maybe infrastructure maintenance team or directly providing the service to the customer. Both of them were critical during COVID, and that was a big jump for FSM in every vertical. Why? Because, well, we lost a bit on different channels that were generating the revenue flows, and it was all about facing the customer with critical services in field and with a field force. So, like, if your, I don't know, let's say internet line failed on you, what you did, you basically call the company, they send somebody to fix it. You know, you cannot fix it yourself. Usually the engineers are there to do the things you cannot do yourself. So it's basically a very important to realize that in these days, okay, we can do a lot of things online, but there are things that we are not able to do ourselves. And from that perspective, we will always have to call somebody to be there, and that's generating a lot of profit. And from my perspective, I think this trend is gonna keep rising. We will do a lot of things on the internet as users, but we will need those engineers. We will need those people in the first line to help us out with the critical stuff that we are not able to do ourselves, with the plumbing, as Kris mentioned, with electricity failures and stuff like that. So I guess maybe if we will keep working in the home office mode, I think we will be, let's say, using our own private infrastructure more and more, and it's basically going to build a big pipeline of services that would be needed to support us on that. And that's field force. That's basically all about field force. So okay, we can order I don't know, shoes and stuff from some web e-commerce platform, but that will not work if we have an electricity failure, if we have, I don't know, somebody to take care of our car, stuff like that. And so there has to be a human interaction, and that's going to be field force and companies that work in these areas. They will have to be more effective, or they will have to hire more people. And I guess that brings us to the first question again: how to do it effectively and try to find less people to do the more job, and so on and so forth. So from my perspective, it's quite important.
Thank you, Marek. Arunas?
To maybe summarize, because guys already covered everything, but if you are field service organizations and the services is still like not profit center, I think you're already losing the competition. I mean, so that's for sure. Everybody is now thinking about servitization, which is like next step. But if you are not making the business from services, I would say you're already behind.
So yes, thank you, and I can add on this as well from let's say our customers. There have been several global issues in Ukraine. There was pandemic, and what I can see, have had calls from a lot of customers who said, our sales have dropped, but thanks God we had a service, and we survived because of that. So that is, I think, as well, a pretty important thing.
It's sorry,
yes.
I was just gonna say it's really interesting. I did a piece on this a little bit, not too long into the pandemic. I don't think any of us thought it would last 2 years. I did a piece on this looking at the role of service and how buoyant service industries are, and I matched it back, and you could go back to 1980s and the depression there, all the way right back to the 1920s when we still had stock market data and we had the Great Depression. And consistently you saw that those organizations that provided maintenance and service remained stable, if not flourished, during a economic downturn, because that makes sense. Companies don't have, and we're in that situation again now. Companies don't have money for big new capex investment in assets, so they're going to sweat those assets further. They're going to try and do more themselves. In our home lives, we're going to try and do more ourselves, but the service organizations, some industries got really hurt during the pandemic. We talk horizontal, so whilst I was talking to some med tech guys who are booming, I'm talking to guys in aviation that have got no planes moving, so there's no business. But generally, services remain fairly resilient across the entire economic downturn as well as the pandemic, which I still think we're only at the beginning of. I think that we've still got some worries in terms of the economic situation. We're seeing inflation rising across most of Europe, certainly in the US. And so again, I think that's a driver for service. I think the sooner we get out of that economic depression, the better. Don't get me wrong, there's a wider point societally, but for us in the service industries, we're a lot more robust and resilient here. And I think that for those organizations, back to Arunas's point, for those organizations that haven't yet made a transition from seeing service in that traditional, it's there just to support product sales, I think they're really in trouble unless they move quickly and start considering how they generate revenue from their service. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, thank you. All the best. And wanted to ask you, I have had a lot of questions about, there is coming in this remote service options and AI and so on. And a lot of customers was like, especially in Baltic region or in this side of Europe, they are a bit laughing on that. So how you imagine electrician will fix that, like sitting at office? So my question to you, how you see that, and maybe you already have experience with someone doing that?
Yeah, I think remote services here now. The data's overwhelmingly clear. It was something that we were talking about for a long time. So the technology is fairly robust. However, the pandemic made it happen. I always phrase this as it's not something that happened overnight. It's just we were on the path and accelerated. However, your point is a great one. We can't expect somebody to just send in an engineer, an electrician, and remote service. Can you imagine the health and safety risk and challenges, just the sheer paperwork of trying to get an end user to do some electricity work. So there's still always going to be a role for hands-on technicians. Now, what this means for service organizations for me is very, very important. I think that, and we're probably a few years out from this, but I think that triage will involve remote service far, far more moving forwards. I think when that initial call comes in and there is an issue, I think there'll be troubleshooted. I don't know if that's the right word, or troubleshot, but you know where I'm going with it. Via remote service. I've already seen some organizations saying now, we will not dispatch an engineer until we've got one of our remote technicians that's had eyes on the problem. So we're starting to see that. That allows for, if it is a problem like, let's use the old classic, have you turned everything off and turned it back on, and it's something that can be really easily resolved, that saves a huge amount of time for the customer, which is the important thing that we need to get across here, is how quickly we get the customer back up and running. But of course, it saves a huge amount on that P&L that we were talking about, of having to send that engineer. We know that the most expensive thing on a P&L is getting the engineer and the engineer's hours. So we want to reduce that. However, also by using remote service, if it cannot be resolved effectively remotely, that's where we are then sending out that engineer. And again, it goes back, there's a lot of these similar talking points. It goes back to that point that we're sending the engineer out with having somebody that's from our organization had eyes on the issue. We can say we've tried troubleshooting X, Y, and Z, so we know it's not that problem. We can see that it's probably this problem. So that engineer is already walking across that door when he's sent out, and we've increased his chance of having that first time fix massively by doing it. I think that that's the way it'll have to go. I think that they will have to sit alongside each other. I think that's Arunas. I think that's the big problem that the whole software side of FSM has, is how we work out scheduling of remote and physical. So if you guys get to that first, I think you'll have nailed it. But I think we based the biggest barrier to remote service was the customer. I think the customer felt that there was intrinsically less of a value of them having to fit, which makes sense, less of a value of them having to fix something with some guy telling them what to do on the phone or via a headset or whatever. It's not the same as having somebody come and see your problem personally. That changed during the pandemic because people couldn't go. They couldn't break biosecurity. They couldn't go to offices. And so suddenly the customer has seen, actually, this is quicker. And what I need is to, I don't care about all the fancy stuff of having a nice van and everything. I want my asset up and running. I want it quicker because I've lost productivity myself. So I think that mindset has changed. Again, coming back to mindset, I don't think field service goes away necessarily. I think it sits alongside remote service. The very final point I'll say on this is, of course, what this does is it means that the importance of the field service visit is even higher. We talked a little bit earlier about the engineer or the technician being an ambassador because there's very few touch points in the digital world. Also, now you've got the fact that the engineer is sent out having gone through the troubleshooting process. So they're not just coming in as a representative of the company, they're coming in as the subject matter expert. They're coming in as the guy that's brought in to fix the problem that couldn't be solved remotely. So, you know, again, we need to make sure they're fully empowered. They have the tools, they have the latest technology, they have the information, they have the data there, because it's become an even more vital part of the service relationship. So, I don't know if I answered the question. I went around the houses, but hopefully you got the gist.
Sure. Marek, what about you? What is your experience from hardware, software side?
So from my perspective, I'm going to be the angry customer. I don't want to be engaged in the process of fixing things. It's not my issue. I want to pay for it and get rid of the problem. So if it's so, then it's all about the process that you design for your field force. Well, okay, you can have some troubleshooting done by the end user. And actually, you can reinforce that process with, let's say, an application with machine learning and an AI in the background that will, I don't know, let's say we can point out our camera on an electrical box and it will say, okay, well, I see some things that are not according to the pattern that we are, we'll say, used to have as a standard. Something was manipulated, something was changed. Okay, there's an issue, we need to send somebody, and so on and so forth. This kind of remote diagnostics, I would say, not fixing that a service, but just like entry level diagnostics on if it's actually a problem or if it's something that we should just reboot. That might bring up a new boost to the effectiveness and keeping that customer satisfaction in place. So like, he's not engaged too much, he's not actually fixing the problem himself, but there's something provided by the company to help him out as a, the entry level tool on the software side. Eventually there has to be somebody that will come, especially in critical areas like plumbing, electricity, healthcare, and so on and so forth. I agree with Kris. I couldn't imagine anybody taking responsibility for that without any experience, knowledge, and so on. So this is something we can do. The place where I see the remote support as a very important option is where we can have actually couple of levels of our field force employees. I mean, like the quality, maybe that's not the best wording. The let's say, based on experience, we can have less and more experienced people working in field. And if we have a less experienced employee, we, of course, again, probably paying him a little bit less, we can use remote support from the more experienced person to connect with the less experienced employee to help him out on an issue that he can handle himself. This is the kind of remote support I can see right now in field force, which will not damage the customer relation, the quality sense, and the let's say the brand of the company providing the service. Okay, because for me as a customer, I don't want to be engaged in fixing things that I'm paying for. This is not me. But if there's an application saying, oh, definitely there's an issue, we're gonna send somebody over, that's okay with me. I can do something like that. But touching electrical box, not really. Yet again, if they send somebody that okay, he takes a look, he says, okay, I cannot handle this, this is something more complicated, but then he's using his smartphone or tablet to connect to the back office and to ask a more experienced person, okay, look, this is the problem. You've probably seen that happen already many times. Guy was taking phone, calling somebody else, asking on some support, but that was not effective because he there was a communication issue on describing what's actually an issue. If you don't know how to fix it, you probably cannot explain what's the issue here. So that might be a problem. But if you can use a camera and some interaction between the two users, the two engineers, I guess that's the kind of support we are looking for. It's somewhere in between, but I'm not sure if we are looking for the kind of solution where the end user will fix things for us. It's not happening, I guess.
Yes, thank you, Marek.
I would say it's about the equipment which we are talking about. It could be different cases. Look, I will take the example. So in our office we have coffee machine. You have it as well. So our head of office already doing remote, let's say, fixing. I don't know. 2 years ago, she was calling the phone, got the instruction what to press, and did that. So now it's more simple with a tool. But I mean, it depends. If it's not electricity box, you can be helped on that and do by yourself. And everybody's happy because coffee already is already there.
Maybe so, but as I was mentioning at the very beginning, it depends on the process. So
Yeah.
if you can design a process in a way that it can be done with kind of a manual approach, okay, there's a, let's say, device recognizing an error on the coffee machine. Okay, if this error appears, then that's the instructions we should handle. We should deliver the actions and so on and so forth. If that's the process, okay, that's good. But then yet again, if end user is actually paying you the maintenance fee, well, there might be some discussion on should I actually be involved in this since I'm paying for it and so on and so forth. So it depends, of course. It could be done, but I don't see it as a very strong trend.
Okay. One more point to add where it could be used. So to increase first-time fix rate, so meaning I'm not asking you to fix the thing, but I'm asking you to let me prepare better. Meaning, show around, give the photos what is an error and what I need to pick, what I need to be prepared for, because I will not come use gasoline, and will come back to take some assets. So that's another use case. And the one who is really will work out and already working. So what Marek mentioned, when the experienced one is helping, the new guy, let's say.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing this, hugely, and it goes right back to that top of that conversation. We talked about, well, we've got a challenge with an aging workforce in most, and I've seen this in EMEA, US, APAC, every industry, every vertical. Most companies have a challenge with an aging workforce within their field technicians and engineers. So that's a challenge. And we're struggling to attract younger engineers and technicians into the industry. And then we have the challenge of getting them out in the field. So we have to spend 2 years, training them before they can actually be a productive member of our team, and before they're actually generating any revenue or saving any cost. Well, actually, by utilizing remote service technology, that's where we can go, right, well, the engineer that's now at maybe 50, who doesn't want to be scurrying down cubby holes and traveling all across the world or climbing up pylons or whatever that gig is, he can actually, but he's got that huge experience. Well, he can now be repositioned working from home or a central location, serving, maybe instead of serving 4 or 5 customers a day, serving 30. But simultaneously, so we're solving that problem. Simultaneously, those guys that are coming through from the academies or however we're bringing them in, they don't need to spend 2 years making sure they know every single thing. They don't need to carry, back to Marek's point way earlier, a manual like this. We can digitize that manual. We can get them that over-the-shoulder help, so we can say, look, this is the problem. I haven't seen it exactly to the example. And there's a really interesting statistic that came out of MIT University in the US a long time ago when AI was first coming in. If you were to say, you see that dial on the left? No, the other left. Yep, turn it this way. There's about a 12% chance we'll get that. If you say this dial, turn it like that, is about there's I think it was 86% improvement from visual accuracy of communication, which again goes to that point. How many times have we seen the engineer on the other end of the phone saying, no, if we can start using these tools, we can fix so many different problems.
Okay, guys, we are coming to close to the end. And one thing we still have like several minutes. I would like to ask maybe some of our listeners have some question. But before they type in the chat those questions, I have the final question for you today is, let's say, we are talking about frontline workers, frontline employees, and we are talking about the huge amount of data which they have in their device. So my question is about the security. So customers are asking, so, okay, he will lose the device, there is all our customer database, all the pricing and so on. So how to secure the data leaks and just to be sure about the, let's say, device and not lost data?
So I guess this is the biggest challenge for Android ever since it's got its way into enterprise. So the first question mark, if the device is suitable for an enterprise use, was always security. And Samsung was kind of is aware of that. So we started in 2014 with Knox. Knox was the first product that actually bring government grade level security with encryption to an Android based device, and it's growing constantly. So now we have even more tools because Knox has become a platform over the years, and it's not just a single tool, it's a set of tools. So not only it can provide security, but it can also provide the security in a range that it's definitely needed for this kind of process, this kind of organization. So you can find the suitable single tool to provide the level of security you need. Starting with the kind of a heavy encryption based on hardware token embedded elements and some stuff like that for government use cases mostly. Just jumping into building a profile that will, let's say, cut off the risky kind of activity from the user himself, and so on and so forth. And the new trends with the mobile threat defense solutions, which will automatically check the system and application activity and then pop up with a notification to an administrator there's something wrong, or even with, okay, let me say there's something coming with Samsung soon and our partner, even say that, okay, if an issue, a threat marked as, let's say, high threat potentially will appear on any of my devices, please execute process 1. We can automate that already, so it's gonna come soon. So this kind of things already. We can choose our level of security. Even if we lose a device, there we have a tool already working on the market from 2017. So it's not something we're testing. That will provide you the ability to lock down the device without erasing the data. This is very important, because what we have now in the market usually is that, okay, wipe the device. You lost the data, wipe it. If you wipe the device, usually you lose yourself. You lose a lot of data yourself. We have a tool that can lock down the device, but not touching the data. It will secure the data, not erase the data. And this is something we can provide already. Frankly speaking, we have over 20 million users of that service already. So I guess this is the kind of service which is needed. It's only enterprise users. So from my perspective, the security level is something we choose to have and we choose to define now. The tools are available in every range of security. We need them to be there. And the most important part is not if it's possible, but am I aware that I can provide a certain level of security? Am I aware that my data needs to be protected? And am I aware that, let's say, security is not a cost, it's an investment? Because data leaks now, well, the easiest way to ruin a company is by data leaks right now. I guess this is the time we're living. So from my perspective, the necessity of having security is something that we should say consider having any digital data floating over the devices.
Okay, thank you, Marek. Kris, Arunas, anything to add for that?
So how many users, Marek, you said? 20 million?
Over 20 million.
So for those who are not in this number, I would say look at those who are already there. So I mean, there is a tools already.
Just
you
one
don't
tool.
need to think too much. You just, if you are enterprise, you just must do that. You must use that. And as let's say, if we as a software providers did I would say an awesome thing that you have unlimited data in your device offline. You can search in less than a second through the whole database of hundreds of thousands assets, let's say. So just please be careful about the data, and again, make the technician happy, so he will not feel, let's say, unsecured, that he will whatever drop the device or will lose the device. It's happening. So or how Marek said, security is not the
cost. It's an investment.
It's not a cost. Yeah. So you are saving the money by doing that. So just use the tools which already is in the market. That's it.
So let me just jump in with one thing. I remember my discussions with FSM kind of customers, and the situation kind of example that always spoke to them and made them implement any security was that one question. Imagine your employee arriving to the meeting spot, and he's jumping out of the car and he leaves a phone inside, probably navigating with that phone. So he leaves the phone with the navigation on. How do you think? Is it locked or not? It's not, because the navigation is unlocking the screen all the time. If you leave it under in the car under your windshield, basically it's there for taking for anybody who wants to get the part of your data. And this is the kind of oh yeah, that's actually true. Wow. And that's what I'm saying. You have to be aware. of the threats out there. You have to be aware that there is something that you might lose, and potentially you can lose the database of your customers by just a simple error of a single employee in field.
I think the only thing I would add to that is, first of all, like we said, the tools are there. We should just use them and be utilizing them. The other thing that quite often gets overlooked in this conversation is the biggest threat, quite often that's cited as a cybersecurity threat, is disgruntled employees. You know, we're living in the age of the Great Resignation, as Microsoft have decided to term it, and there's quite a lot of data out there of what happens to those devices and where that is the threat. And that goes right back to like I'm a Gen Xer, so I remember in the 90s it was like, you know, the biggest threat was somebody coming in with a floppy disk and putting some malicious, you know, there's whole movies about that stuff. But it's still a true fact. You know, the disgruntled employees and happy employees can pose a massive threat to cybersecurity, especially when we can talk about taking data and data privacy away. So that's something that needs to be considered. That's something that we can all do as organizations, is make sure we've got robust processes in place that think about this, and then lean on, you know, our technology providers, lean on them to be able to say, okay, as part of our protocol, when an employee leaves, you know, can we put that device until it's returned? Can we set that device so it's secured, it's off, the data is not wiped when it's returned? Exactly that point. But it's these things that we need to think about, very similar to that point in the car. You know, there are so many situations that we think of, and some of them are accidents that the engineers left his device in the car. Some of them we have to accept there are bad actors, and sometimes there are malicious, disgruntled employees out there. And we need to just have the same transparent protocols in place, lean on our technology partners to make sure that we can put those processes into action.
Yes, thank you, Kris. And we are really over the time. So I would appreciate and really thank you guys for joining today. And one last thing, what I could ask you, for those listeners who are listening right now, and for those who will listen that pre-recorded, so what you could wish. I mean, there are a lot of fears from the company owners, from CEOs, from service managers. Is there anything you could give from today's discussion for those companies? Maybe Kris.
I think I'll try and keep it short, but I'm not very good at doing that. I think it's understand that we're in a massive period of change, not just in technology. We're in a golden age of technology. You know, we've talked about the cloud revolution, the mobile revolution. Those are nothing compared to where we're at now, where we start seeing IoT, AR, advanced artificial intelligence, machine learning. You know, I haven't even worked out how blockchain quite fits into everything, but that's the other bit that seems to be. But everywhere we look, there's incredible technology that is improving field service operations. At the same time, as we discussed, we're going through a very big mindset change, where, you know, we're moving away from break fix, we're moving away from transactional nature service towards the experiential service, the forward-looking preventative service, to advanced services, and service is a key revenue generator. Now, that path we're on, I think we're already set on. The question we have now is, how do we navigate our way from the past to the future? And so I think all of these things need to be considered. We need to be looking at, when it comes to technology, we need to be having these conversations with our technology partners to understand not just how they can fix our problems today, but how they see the roadmap of where we're all going tomorrow. But I think the important thing as well is to remember that it's the continuous improvement journey. You know, digital transformation doesn't have to be one big hit. And there's a phrase my American colleagues use all the time, that we can't boil the ocean. So I think with this digitalization journey, let's look at how do we prioritize what is the first thing that we want to do. Marek's example of taking, you know, the digitizing the heavy paper load, that's a very quick, easy solution that can bring us so many different tangible benefits, where we see the engineers not having to carry so much weight, so there's a health and safety benefit. We see the fact that we can automate invoicing, so we improve the service to cash cycle. We don't have to spend that money on paper, which, like everything else in the world at the moment, is astronomically more expensive than it was 2 years ago. So they're consistent benefits. We can see that ROI, but pick those conversations wisely. And the final thing I'd say is all of these discussions, all of these decisions, the technology partners should be there as your partner. That's the world we work in now. Okay, but you shouldn't look at these as technology decisions. These are business decisions that involve technology. And that's my final thought.
Thank you, Kris. Anything to take away from this panel discussion for listeners? Marek, from you, maybe?
It's hard to add anything to Kris.
Sorry, Marek. Sorry.
I should leave him the last one. Yeah.
I
won't get invited again. Sorry.
I can add very shortly. So, technicians, engineers, like frontline is already like critical part of field service management, and the impact will only grow. So, if you are a manager, service manager, CEO, who can do any impact, so think technician first from the first day. ROI will come, reports will come. Think technician first, and it will be way easier.
Yeah, let me just add that, like, you shouldn't think about technology as something very complicated. When you have the right people behind your back supporting you with the right knowledge, it's going to be a toolbox filled with tools you need to do your job effectively. So think about things that you could do with a single device, let's say a digital toolbox, instead of something horrible, very expensive, and so on and so forth. And as Kris mentioned, you don't have to be spending all that money on all the tools and things that you want to have in the first shot. You can build it up as a process of investments and start to cover the most irritating parts of the processing you have in your company, then move on to the next level to make the job perfect and more convenient for everybody, including your customers. So we can see that we can be eco-friendly with a new technology. We can be more effective. We can spend less, earn more, and make the job easier and make our employees happier with the new technologies. I guess that's very important for everybody to have all those benefits, and it can be done with just one step.
Yes, true, Marek. And I really want to appreciate you for joining. And I wish I could have like a couple hours more, because this topic is so huge, and I'm sure there is a lot more we can discuss about field service, frontline workers, how to make them happy, satisfied, how to keep them engaged with the company. So I appreciate you, and see you on the next panel discussion, maybe. So thank you very much, and have a nice week for you guys.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Goodbye.